When I first saw Equilibrium, almost a quarter century ago, I took it as a Matrix knockoff with a heavy Orwell and Fahrenheit 451 influence, which it is, but rewatching it now I see a lot more at work here. It's never going to be one of the cornerstone works of dystopian fiction, largely because it is derivative in a lot of ways, but it combines the elements in a way that I think deserves some credit. We begin with a world-building data dump. The short of it being that World War III so traumatized the survivors that the state imposed a mandatory drug regimen that dulls emotion, tamping down the impulses that spur us on to war, and also makes us more docile and controllable, but that part is silent here. It's framed as a propaganda piece, so it'll be "this is our salvation" in tone. And these rules are enforced by a warrior priesthood, the grammaton clerics. Letter priest, which could be taken very loosely as literary critic, which makes the whole thing kind of funny. Before someone jumps in the comments, I know they're going for the whole name of God thing here.
Tetragrammaton, there's nothing we can't do.
And as we see when Christian Bale shows up with Sean Bean to raid a trendy little Chechnyan chic underground art collection and do some dramatic stationary dual-wield CQB stuff that, while a great way to get dead, looks really cool here, the job of the clerics is to fight sense crime and all of its paraphernalia. You may have heard the phrase war on beauty. That's their job. Whether paintings, music, books outside the purely informative variety, it all has to go.
All those things that might tempt us to feel again.
It's a clean and orderly world, but a grim one full of tedious people. Though I feel a certain kinship with the guy smirking during the daily dose of propaganda. That's Father on the screen, one-upping Big Brother, the personification of the state. So we've met these two clerics, John Preston and I don't remember Sean Bean's character, but it doesn't matter because you guessed it, he's going to die. And leading up to it, we go from Libria, a sprawling city of brutalist architecture, clean, orderly, and uniform, through the perimeter wall into the ruins of the old world, where they meet in a ruined cathedral. I'm kind of a fan of brutalist architecture in moderation, but it's an interesting visual contrast between the complex lines of the cathedral, a structure that exalts something higher than man, and the hard, simple lines of the walled-off city, all of which tends to make the individual feel small. They kind of achieve the same thing, but in opposite ways. And the wall visually signals that the world of beauty and soul is both in ruins and must be kept outside. The entire society is about shielding themselves from anything that might give life meaning. It can be taken not only as a broad critique of central planning and social engineering, but of materialist philosophy in general. They've solved poverty, crime, war, but at the cost of their soul and humanity. Their world is a smoothly running machine that does nothing.
It's circular. You exist to continue your existence. What's the point?
But yes, I have to talk about
the gun katas.
This nugget does a lot of lifting in this movie. Not only is it the in-story explanation for why this guy can walk into a room with a couple Berettas and take out a dozen armed henchmen while swinging his arms around like he's conducting an orchestra in a mosquito swarm, but it also embodies this calculating, efficient ideal of their whole social theory.
Through analysis of thousands of recorded gunfights, the cleric has determined that the geometric distribution of antagonists in any gun battle is a statistically predictable element,
turning the apparent chaos of a gunfight into a cold, ordered science. Of course, we kind of have that already. It doesn't look like traditional martial arts like it's portrayed here, but there are multiple training philosophies, schools if you will, that focus on the right way to not only use the weapon, but make it part of yourself as a fighting unit. How to maximize your speed and hit probability, proper use of cover, how to divide a room into slices to most efficiently clear it of hostiles without getting yourself shot. A whole body of skills that must be learned and movements that must be heavily practiced if you want to get good. My gun fu is absolutely mid, but I can recognize that while this gun kata is fantasy bullshit, the idea that gunfighting can be approached as a modern martial art, broken down into distinct techniques practiced sort of like kata, has some merit to it. And Equilibrium begs for some compare and contrast with two works that it strongly echoes and borrows from. There are heavy 1984 parallels throughout, whether the direct swap of father for big brother, terms like sense crime, the use of child spies as a mechanism of control.
It's my job to know what you're thinking.
But a comparison between cleric John Preston and Winston Smith doesn't really work. Winston is essentially a passive character. Most of his actions are at the prodding of others. He rents the room in the prole sector when the proprietor practically offers it to him. He begins meeting Julia at her instigation. He joins the Brotherhood at O'Brien's invitation, agreeing to what is asked of him and waiting for further instructions. Without being nudged by the party trying to entrap him, he would have gone on doing his job, remembering things that he probably shouldn't and keeping them to himself, having a mix of pity and contempt for the meek souls around him, all while appearing just as meek and contemptible to them. Preston has much more in common with Fahrenheit 451's Guy Montag. Both of them not only have a clear moment of doubt when their transformation begins, but they act on it. Montag, a fireman tasked with burning books, slips a Bible into his pocket almost unconsciously at first. It's directly echoed twice in Equilibrium, first with Preston's partner pocketing a copy of Yeats and later Preston himself. In both cases, Montag and Preston, they take deliberate action to learn more and they act against the authorities. Both men kill when cornered, yet both eventually bring the hammer down on themselves when their resistance becomes obvious. But all three end in very different places. 1984 has the grim fatalistic ending. After following the path set out for him, Winston Smith ends as the political prisoner, converted and sacrificed to the party. Montag slips away out into the countryside as the bombs fall. It's a much more American ending, leaving the big city and its problems for wide open spaces. Equilibrium, though, goes for the Hollywood ending. The tyrants are deposed, the resistance triumphs, the people wake up to a bright new day, and Preston is the hero. Yay for the good guys. Which normally I would dismiss, but in this case it says something important, because the enemy here is a system that is explicitly anti-human. Its foundation is the eradication of human nature, of making us into something utterly different from what we are. It's a system that kills humanity. It's not exactly subtle that the drug, prosium, comes in capsules that look like bullets and is self-delivered with a gun-like injector. The society depicted here isn't just oppressive, it's a civilizational scale autoimmune disorder, humanity attacking itself. We're going to talk about that idea again in a different context. And so in this case, a sudden awakening isn't just a nice pat Hollywood ending, it's a statement about how much force is required to prop up an unnatural system.
If we can succeed in disrupting the supply for even one day, our cause will be won by human nature itself.
That kind of authoritarianism is brittle. A few cracks at the base can cause the whole thing to shatter. There's something else here, too, that I think needs to be addressed, beyond the rolling mags. It presents a contrast of leadership philosophies. The head of the underground resistance movement describes emotion as something that must be controlled by oneself. Leaders have a responsibility to control themselves more. They need to hold themselves to a higher standard than others are held to.
Some of us have to forego that luxury so that the rest can have it.
Whereas the leader of Libria, who has been using the long-dead father as an avatar, describes it differently. One makes a sacrifice for his people. The other demands a sacrifice from them. Our entire political class falls into the latter category. Equilibrium is mostly remembered as an early-aughts gun-fu movie, which is fair. But it does hold its own in the annals of dystopian fiction with a distinctive setting that follows logically from its premise. It can be really in your face at times.
Prosium, the great nepenthe, opiate of our masses, glue of our great society.
But it does a fine job of skewering the purely materialist worldview and reminding us that a stable mean isn't optimization, but stagnation. That life shouldn't always be easy.
At the cost of the dizzying highs of human emotion, we have suppressed its abysmal lows.
Or to pilfer a line from Bob Dylan, behind every beautiful thing there's been some kind of pain. I guess what I'm saying is, enjoy the dizzying heights, try to ride out those abysmal lows, and Don't let the man get you down. And maybe practice your gun fu.